Hey everybody, Alex here, and welcome to Video Games Gaiden. Look who I finally got to come on the show. None other than formerly the Laggy Gamer,
Yes.
StevoSupremo.
Now
Wow,
StevoSupremo. Yes. It's been a long time since we've been able to do a podcast like thing like this since when was that minisode we did? It's been ages ago on the AGP channel.
uh,
I can't I don't know. It's been 5 plus years, had to be, even 6.
I,
But it's been a long time.
it's been super long, and it's like one of those things where I loved doing that sort of stuff back in the day, and then trying to do something like this, I was just like, okay, easily, I got to get Stevo on. Like, there's no way that this cannot not happen. And then you're like, oh, by the way, I moved to the West Coast. I'm like, okay, a little bit of a time difference, not a problem. And then pulling back the
Oh,
curtain a little bit, here's the schedule of all my kids' sporting events. I'm like, okay, I guess a Wednesday at
yes.
3 p.m. your time is the only time we can do this.
It got things actually was tougher back in the day too. It used to be like late night recording stuff, but then now that the kids are grown and people have things doing here. There's even other things picking him up for practice. There's stuff after practice this evening. It's insane. He's got a game tomorrow that's an hour and a half away. It's as they get older, it gets even more difficult to do things. But like Alex said, I've been looking forward to trying to get into something like this too. I've been wanting to get this episode in. It's all my fault because I
It
am
is.
slow
It
on
is.
Alex. Talk to any of his guests, you know by now, he completes these games like that while the rest of us crawl along at our own pace. But it is all my fault why this is delayed. So, but I've been looking forward to doing it too.
Well, I literally tell everybody, no rush. And then like I'm like, you
You
done
done
yet?
yet?
You done? What the hell, man? Keep it pushing, keep it pushing. All right, so all right, we've already been trying to catch up because you and I like we talk for hours. But tell us
Yeah.
about the social media. You rebranded the channel some time back, and now you're like the Jarl of yard sales. Like how did all this happen?
And I want to get out the way real quick too, because if this comes to a abrupt end, like we said, I'm on a time crunch. So we're gonna try to squeeze this all in, but if not, we'll see how it happens. I just wanted to alert people in case we don't get it wrapped up cleanly at the end. But with the rebranding of the channel, it happened, like you said, formerly known as a Laggy Gamer when I started off. And that was because where I used to live back in Virginia, I didn't have like Ethernet internet. I couldn't get it where I was located. I was out in the country, couldn't get it. So I had to use internet off of a cell phone using an app called Foxfi, if anyone else has heard of it or anything, where you can tether to your computer and literally your download speed is like a gig or two. So, of course, everything I did was laggy. When I got on the World of Warcraft, a normal ping would be 46 to 100 milliseconds. Mine was 1500 milliseconds. So, if I hit an attack, it didn't initiate till like 2 seconds later. So, Laggy Gamer was how that was born. Rebranded it. I forget when I actually did the rebranding to Stevo Supremo because that's just the nickname my friends and stuff at work always called me. And I actually got high speed internet. So I was like, you know what? I'm not really the laggy gamer anymore because I'm not lagging around anymore. I'm actually got normal internet. So I just switched it up to my normal name, something more personal. And yeah, that's pretty much why I did it. Felt weird at first because, like, you and all the other people I still talk to who know me from back in the day, I want to know what it's like on your guys' end, like having to call him by a different name now. Like he's got a different name now, and I've known him by the Laggy Gamer. What was that like? The transition? You would just call me Steven. I call you Alex, but I guess
Yeah,
it
but
really
we were
doesn't
on a
matter.
first name basis. I was just like, oh, cool, he rebranded. And I was
Yeah,
thinking like I should rebrand as opposed to naming myself different on every single platform. Like like pulling
Steam
again.
names. Everything's different. Yes.
Yeah, it's everything is I am the king of branding, you know? Like I failed marketing 101, you know? So
Would you go to Alcender though? Like, what would be if you were to do it? Have there been any ideas of what it would be?
Honestly, if I was able to, and it didn't sound absolutely horrible, I would just change everything to Wet Rubbish because I think that's like the funniest name. But having a
Yeah.
YouTube channel called Wet Rubbish doesn't really do you any favors. It's gonna be like, there's no wet garbage on this channel. It's just some guy with terrible lighting. This
And
is
and that's
bullshit.
and that's the thing too, like since we're doing stuff in gaming, it's like I was trying to think of a name that could be relatable to gaming-ish too, but I just said forget it. And Return to Mother Base is very related to gaming. So hopefully people do know what that means, but
Yeah, or as I've been saying lately, here on the Return to Mother Base program, we operate on a shoestring budget. We just got a new mic, that's big monies,
yeah,
considering we got it during Prime Day.
we're Mike
All right,
Twins guys, so if you didn't notice.
and it ain't half bad. Next step is a better webcam, but this webcam is still better than my actual camera, which is kind of depressing. All right, so besides YouTube, I know you're on Twitch for a minute. Did you kind of
Mhm.
stop with that?
Oh yeah. I forget what did it. They were doing some changes over there, and I just didn't like the changes, like political type stuff going on over there. And I was like, you know what? I'm done with them. And I was gonna do more streaming on YouTube, but just time, like no time for that. And I'm not very entertaining when it comes to playing games. So I don't. I like to sit and be quiet when I'm playing. So I'm not really an entertainer like anyone else who does that stuff. And the only I was gonna do one here recently, like when prepping for this upcoming show I'm doing for, just like sitting there pricing out things and hanging out, just listening to some video game music. Or I got a bunch of N64 games in my collection that I need to clean before I shelve them, like just to sit and hang out and chat with people. I would do streams like that again, but I don't know if I'd ever go back to doing games again, just because stuff I like to play, like Dragon Quest 3 is coming out. Like if I stream that, I don't think it's fun watching someone play an RPG like that, so probably won't go back to it.
Yeah, I think it depends on what the game is in particular. Like Katie will watch me play like a survival horror game.
Yeah,
But like I put on Xenoblade, she just goes in the other room. She's like,
exactly.
I,
Unless
I
someone's doing like a speed run or something. Like I like watching speed runs of RPGs and stuff, but sitting down and watching someone play through it, it's tough for me.
yeah, and like even with Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, right? Which I've been playing a lot of. Like she'll watch like the first time and then she's like, you keep picking the same people. I want to see different moves.
Are you picking the overpowered like Beerus and everyone? Is he like the strongest one? Like I hear rumors
No,
about
no, dude. You got so they had to nerf Yachirobe because he can pop senzu beans in the middle of the fight.
Yajirobe gets a nerf. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
he
That's
did.
gonna tell me Hercule is like top tier.
No, there was literally a patch note. They're like, we had to nerf the senzu beam because it filled him back up to like full HP or something every single
That's
time.
awesome. That's awesome.
No, but house rule, if you're gonna do a fusion, you need to put both guys on your team. You have to start at ground zero every single time. So
Okay.
I've been rocking Super Dragon Ball Super Gogeta because he has um he has all the attacks from the movie. Like literally,
Oh,
like
really?
motion for motion, including the complete rip off attack from Chrono Trigger he has. Which I don't know. I love that movie, man. But I did see Dragon Ball Daima, the first 3 episodes in the theater with Pat recently.
I remember you telling me that. How were the results? What did you think?
So there was nobody in the theater. Some kid showed up with like a extra large popcorn, extra large soda, and an extra large nachos. Proceeded to drop it all on the floor, panicked, and then ran out before the movie even started, and never came back.
I drop
But
things too, guys. So
it's honestly, it's the first 3 episodes, and it was dubbed, and he and I usually watch it subbed, but the animation is so good.
really,
Like on the big screen, it's like the saturation, the colors, everything just popped. It looks so good.
I remember watching the announcement trailers for it, but I really know nothing about what the storyline's going to be. Do you know a quick synopsis like what this is? I know I've seen them like as the many versions of themselves. are they shrunk or is it like baby versions? You don't really know yet without spoiling anything.
The first episode tells you, but essentially somebody uses the Dragon Balls and wishes them to turn into kids.
Okay,
Um,
got it.
because their world has Dragon Balls that can only be gotten by those who are innocent. So the idea is if we get these strong fighters and we turn
Ah,
them into kids, they have reduced strength so we could subdue them. But children are ultimately innocent, so they should be able to get them.
is Vegeta innocent even as a kid? I don't know. That'd be interesting to see.
So, some it's not just Goku and Vegeta and Piccolo, it's like everybody, and some of them are really funny.
Oh wow, that's
Like
awesome.
you like when you see it, you'll know which one I'm talking about. You'll laugh at it.
I saw
But
stuff with their voice actors, and it's weird because we're so used to the voice actors we've grown up with. At least you said you listen to sub. I love the English voice actors. But if they're the kid versions, I saw where it's new voice actors. So I'm like, man, it's going to be tough hearing different voices here, but I still want to
yeah,
watch it.
I think the one that came back was the one who did Goku in GT. I think it's the same person.
Okay.
But other than that, like Piccolo's new, obviously
And
Vegeta.
this is canon. Like it's after Super. Like this is a canon
After the
storyline.
after the Buu saga.
Okay. So this is after Boo Saga.
So this
Got
is,
it.
I guess, a replacement for GT because they technically go on a grand tour.
So Super Saiyan Blue and all that stuff isn't a thing yet.
Nope.
Okay. Got it.
All right. So, man, this is what happens, folks. This is
I
this.
know
You can't put us the two of us in a room. All right. Three random questions. Three
Oh
random
my
questions.
goodness. Here we go.
We're gonna start easy and we're gonna work up.
All right.
Number one, please explain how this beard happened.
Oh man, this is the easiest one to answer. Okay. If you've been following my channel or anything, you've known I've been in law enforcement pretty much all my life. And when you were a police officer or any form of law enforcement I was in, you weren't allowed to have facial hair. We could have a mustache, and that was about it. But like most guys, if I just grew out a mustache, I would look like, I don't know if you're allowed to say that word on YouTube these days, so I won't say it
Oh,
to
the
not
P word.
the
P-
PS. So you probably most guys look like that, even though I fill a mustache out pretty good, but I didn't want to do just a mustache look. But as soon as I was done with it, when we were moving back, when we were moving over here to the West Coast, and I knew I wasn't going to get back into law enforcement over here just because I didn't want to learn a whole new state's laws or anything. I was like, you know what? I'm never going to shave this thing. I'm finally going to grow it out. And that's pretty much how it happened. Like, I had to shave for all those years. It's like, no more. I'm letting it grow. And that's pretty much how it happened. And as soon as that happens, I don't know if anyone keeps up with it, but a lot of agencies now let their officers have facial hair. I don't think you can in New York still. I don't know if you've noticed any. Some
No.
are still strict, but majority of them you can have nothing like this, but you can grow facial hair and beards. But of course, it would happen as soon as I'm done. But that's pretty much the easy answer.
Yeah, because this beard thing, I thought it was like a West Coast uniform that you just had to have a beard like Cooper or something. Because that's literally every video I watch. Everybody has a beard like that. I'm like, it must be a uniform or
Especially
something.
Washington State. You figure, uniform, give me a nice little flannel shirt or something. I'd blend in perfect here. But yeah, it's I actually get I don't see that many around me as I thought I would, but there's a large like Hispanic population where I'm at. So, and a lot of them aren't growing big beards like this. But every time I'm in a grocery store, it's like someone's regularly pointing it out, like, "Oh, nice beard" and stuff like that. So, it's pretty cool.
All right. Next question. Again, working up to the hard one.
All right.
This is a double-sided one. Top food you miss from back home, worst food that you miss from back home, best food out in Washington, worst food out of Washington.
Okay. I might have to get you to repeat. Why are you looking at me, honey? You're interrupting the podcast. By the way, the other thing that made this hard was I'm now in a big open space. I have no privacy in this area. So if I'm trying to do or record anything, it's just impossible without intruders. So
It's okay.
now that
Remember,
I have an
I had
audience,
I had a wardrobe malfunction, so don't forget that.
All right, so I'll answer this in part ones. My favorite food I miss from Virginia or back on the East Coast. It's more of a in this town. We don't have a lot of restaurants to go to. It's such a small town. So I would say it's a probably a very simple answer, but we used to like to go out to eat all the time. And there's not like a staple East Coast food that I'm familiar with that I can't get over here, but there's no Texas steakhouse near me. So I don't have like a good steakhouse to just go get a nice, good steak. So I would say that's one of the ones that I miss the most. Another one is a pizza place that was local down there that was called Vito's Pizza. Really love their stuff. And there's no pizza joints here. There's not one
Really?
like pizza joint in this whole area. Yes. So it's kind of tough for stuff like that. Now, what were all the parts of the question?
Favorite food out in Washington, and then least favorite food from both sides.
Okay, least favorite food. I'll do my favorite food out here. The Mexican food out here, way better than anything I've ever tasted in Virginia. Like just because it's like a large population here, and like they have a ton of those restaurants, and just going out to a food truck. There's a farmers market. Um, what do I get there? A birria. I hope I'm saying it right.
A birria
And
taco?
yes,
There you with the
and
consomme?
yes. I've never tasted anything like that in Virginia. Once I had it, I was hooked at it. So I would go to this farmer's market once in a blue moon to make sure I pick one up, and all the other local places that have just these wonderful tacos. So, am I allowed to say the Mexican food in general, or do I have to pick a particular?
No, whatever.
Okay, the Mexican food here. Now, the worst back on the east. Ugh. I think this is an East Coast thing. Maybe it's out here too, but oysters, like anywhere you get oysters, like it's a seasonal thing out there, and it's really big in like the fall time. I can't stand an oyster or anything around it or the smell or nothing like that. So I don't
Really?
miss those. Yes, cannot stand it. And over here, is there something big out here? I don't know because mainly the big thing here is Mexican food, and I love it all that's out here. Oh, the Chinese food is horrible out here. There we go. There's no good Chinese food places. I can't get a good orange chicken anywhere. There's a place my wife likes to go to, but it's very subpar. So if you're coming to Washington, at least Moses Lake, don't expect to get good Chinese food.
All right, last question. This is the hard one.
Here we go.
Now I know you're a wrestling aficionado.
Not as much as I think you might have more knowledge than me, but we'll see.
No, but hear me out.
Okay.
You're putting together a celebrity 3-man tag match. Now, it could be celebrities alive or dead and video game characters. Who is on what team and who are they fighting against? And who wins?
So we're doing like a 6-man tag basically. So three
Yeah.
and three.
Yep. And it could be wrestlers, celebrities, alive or dead, but you have to have video game characters in there too. You have to tell me why.
Okay. So video game characters. Do I want to make this like a funny match? Do I want to make this like top tier characters brawling out? Do I want to make it even? I can't have anyone like overpowered and just crushing everyone like Kratos with his powers. Let's see. First, I'm going to go. You know how I'll do this? I'll do a video game character, a actual wrestler, and like a celebrity for each team. So each team gets one of each. How about
All
that?
right. All right.
Okay.
Cool.
So actual wrestler is going to be the easiest one I want to start with. So for each team, I'm going to go with just to make it fun. I'm not going to go with like your top dogs like that we all like. So I'm going to go with some like kind of undercard guys that I really enjoyed watching when their music hit. I was like, oh, it's awesome to see them come to the ring and hopefully get a win. And one of those back in the day, which he's still wrestling today, is Carlito. He spits in the
Really?
face of people who don't want to be cool. Like I love that line when he would come out. And I liked his little backbreaker finisher. So I'm gonna go with Carlito on one team as the wrestler. On the other team, kind of want to pick someone from WCW side. I can't pick that guy because he did very bad things. Um, but he was so good at his craft. Um, let's take the guy who's been and done it all. He kind of outshines Carlito in a way, but I want to go with Chris Jericho just because he's had so many different like innovations of himself. Preferably, I'd go with the Lionheart version from WCW because it's kind of equal size of Carlito and everything. And I think Lionheart, Chris Jericho, and Carlito would have had a great like intercontinental title match. It would have been awesome. So I'll go with them as the wrestlers. Celebrities, I'm going to keep it really simple. It'd be Trump and Biden. We're going to have those two finally duke it out in the wrestling ring since we just had our elections here in the States and everything. It'd be funny to see those old mans, and Trump has the experience. So we would see how that goes. For the, what were we on? The video game characters. This is where it's tough because there's so many to choose from, Alex. Man. Do I want to pick RPG characters? Do I just want to play it safe just to get this topic done with and move on and put Mario on one side and Luigi and finally settle
Oh,
the fight? Or
incorrect.
we'll dip in. We'll dip in. We won't use them. See, now I'm looking around at games. Let's go with, um, we'll go with Chris Redfield because he used them wrestling moves in Resident Evil 5. He'll suplex you in a heartbeat. And man, who would be on the other team? Oh, I didn't put what team he's on. Chris Redfield would be on the Trump Carlito team. Then you have Chris Jericho, Biden. I got to give him another power guy. This is going to be uneven. Let's go with. Man, you're putting me on the spot here. Hopefully, you can edit out my dead air. I don't want you to have to. Donkey Kong. We'll put him to kind of even the playing field.
See, I was expecting you to say Master Chief.
That's actually a really good one. I don't know if I'm allowed to change it. And since you gave me the idea, I'd love to have him on that team.
All
So if
right,
you let me
Master.
change the rule, I'll put
Yeah.
him on there. So Master Chief, Chris Jericho, and Biden versus Carlito, Trump, and I forgot who I said already. Who did I say for the video game character? Chris Redfield. There you go. And I
All
actually
right.
think with at least with Jericho and Chief, I think Team Biden over there is going to probably crush them. So we'll see.
Master Chief. Save us, Master Chief. You're our only hope. All right. Wow. So yeah, this is honestly the three random questions have been my favorite part because I've purposely tried to come up with different questions for everybody. So for you, I
Oh.
had a feeling this would be a good one. All right. So now we're going to finally transition into the
Wait,
topic du jour.
the top of match, Hell in a Cell. There you go.
Hell in a Cell.
Or Buried Alive. We haven't seen that in forever. Let's do a
No,
casket match. You have to bury all of them.
an ambulance match. And Stone Cold is driving.
And Kurt comes out with his milk truck and sprays everyone down. See, now I can get on a wrestling tangent. So, yes, move on.
All right, so now for the topic du jour. We're going to be talking about action RPGs, looters, and the addictive nature of it. So, going right into it, I mean, obviously, your Borderlands games, your Diablos, your
Yeah.
games of that nature. What was your first experience with that genre, and what made it click for you?
It's awesome that you wanted to pick this topic for us to talk about because I've been wanting to do a video on my channel for years where I was going to talk about my favorite ones. Excuse me. I want to do a video of like my favorite looters and everything, but now we kind of get to talk about it here. So this is awesome. Initially, what got me into really loving loot based games, which I mean, if anyone's kind of familiar, you could almost call any type of RPG semi-looterish because even in a Dragon Warrior or something, you're going to the shop to get your new sword to upgrade yourself to make you stronger. But I think we're just trying to narrow it down to where, like, you get a drop from an enemy or a boss or something. How do you want to define the looter first? Like we said, to Borderlands and stuff like that. So hopefully people kind of know what we're talking about. But World of Warcraft, if that counts, it
It
has to be
does.
what got me into the loot craze because anyone who's played an MMO and Alex has played World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 11, etc., that that dopamine effect when especially if you played like classic World of Warcraft during those Burning Crusade and Wrath of Lich King days, you could be walking around with a most of the time in loot based games, you have your color rarities, white, your basics, then you got your green, rares, your blues. And most of the time in those earlier games, you'd be walking around with a white. If you're lucky, you get a green with like +2 strength on it. But then you get a chance to go into a dungeon with your group of friends where the loot is just it's enhanced like tenfold. And if you can get a piece of that sweet loot out of that dungeon, like your just character just instantly becomes that much stronger. What could have took a normal mob 5 hits to kill now takes 2 or 3 just because you got that awesome weapon drop. You could have been carried around something that said +2 strength, but the weapon you want from the dungeon has like +12 on it, plus a stamina stat. And getting the chance to get that loot, it's just the excitement it creates from if it actually drops from you. Like you get so excited about it. And that excitement is what geared me to loving loot games. So it started with World of Warcraft and MMOs. And anyone, like we said, anyone who's played them, you know the feeling if you finally get that loot drop you've been waiting for or grinding for.
You see, and for me, it wasn't necessarily MMOs. The first one for me was actually the original Diablo.
Okay.
And I actually have a funny story about that. When the original Diablo came out, like, I think it was like PC Magazine or something like that. Ran out to EB Games, or I think at the time it was still Software, etc. Bought the game, installed it on my computer, and it didn't work at
Like it
all.
seemed most games back in those days.
Yeah.
Like it's like rolling the dice. Is it going to work on my gateway? I don't know.
Yeah, and it didn't work on my compact Presario all-in-one
There you go.
computing system, right? So, it didn't boot, didn't do anything. So I was like, well, I have to return it. And I had to get I was very young. I had to get into a whole rigmarole with the store manager and my dad and my mom being like, no, he met the system requirements, but it doesn't work. The disk must be faulty, defective, whatever. And after the whole 1 hour thing, they didn't have any more copies. So I ended up not leaving with Diablo at all. Fast
Oh,
forward a couple of months, we get a new computer because we needed a new one at that point. And I'm thinking, okay, this new one is obviously going to play Diablo.
it's got to.
Go back to the same software, etc. They have the game, and the strategy guide is half off or 20% off or something. So I get the strategy guide, not realizing that the dungeons are procedurally generated. More on that later. I install the game, go to boot it up. It doesn't work. But
Again?
now But now there's a 1-800 technical support number on the back of the manual.
Okay.
So I call it, I explain my situation, and the guy goes, "Oh, you have to install DirectX 3.1.
What are we up to now? 15? This is how
12.
long yeah, this is how long ago that stuff is. Okay.
Install it, game boots up no problem. I'm like a pig in shit. I'm all excited, bust out the strategy guide, have it out in front of me. And I just descend into the cathedral, going through all the different floors, and none of the walkthrough is making any sense. It's
Yeah.
telling me to do things that don't exist. It's telling me to do this, that, and third. It's telling me to fight the butcher. There's no butcher. Not until later on in this book to say, oh, by the way, your quest log is randomly generated. These may not be in any order. Some quests may not actually occur. However, for the purpose of the strategy guide, they recommend re-rolling your character over and over again until you get the butcher quest because his cleaver is a very strong piece of loot.
Ooh, nice.
So do you know how many times I re-roll the warrior until I finally got the butcher to
And
pop?
is this an initial quest, or you got to do like 3 quests
Three or
before?
four, 3 or 4
Oh,
before.
so you had to play it a little. Oh man. Before that quest popped, I'm gonna guess 16.
18 times.
Ooh, that was close. Nice.
Literally deleted characters and remade characters over and over again. But that was the thing.
Man.
Once I got the butcher's cleaver, and to your point about getting all that loot, I think it's a blue. I did not want to give it up. There were greens that were better than the blue. But that initial, like, you work for like that
Yeah.
particular drop, especially in MMO, if it's like a world boss or it's something really complicated or
Oh
hard to
yeah.
get to. Once you have it, you don't want to give it up, even if you know you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. And there are instances where, I guess it comes down to a little bit of customization, right? So, like with Borderlands, I love machine guns, shotguns, and rocket launchers.
Okay.
I think in Borderlands 1, I was rocking the same rocket launcher for a majority of the game because I just loved the fact that it literally shot out like 18 rockets at the same
Like
time.
multiple, yeah.
And it was like, like a wave, like an anime wave of rockets, right?
Yeah.
It did no damage whatsoever. It did like 5, but
But it looked awesome.
it looks so cool. And that's like where that addictive nature comes in because you're like, "Ooh, something cool, something new, something better. I got better job. This isn't as cool as what I
Yeah.
have." But
And
you
I'm
still
actually
get to go
curious now, with that butcher drop, was it guaranteed, or was there a chance it might not have dropped and you'd had to roll again?
I
Or do
have
you know
no
if it was a
idea.
guaranteed? Okay.
I got it. That's all I know.
All right. So
And I literally rocked it, I think, for the entire game.
that's awesome. Because like you said, you worked for it, so you wanted to have it. And just like in an MMO, it's different nowadays, but back then it wasn't a guaranteed drop. You might have to farm the same dungeon 12 times, especially near end game, to where you might finally get a chance for that to drop. And then you might have to compete with other players in the party who want it. And like you said, and there was no like cosmetics to where you can customize and show whatever weapon you want and all that stuff
Yeah.
now, transmog things back then. And if you worked hard for something, even at level 40, or if you killed a world boss or something, even if it made you weaker, like you're walking around the town and people are seeing, oh, he's got that dagger from whatchamacallit. That's awesome. I don't even got that dagger, but he has it. So it's like, you're kind of showing off a little bit too, at least in an MMO. Like, yeah, look at me, check me out. I got this cape. You can't get this cape.
Yeah, and I think there's a degree, right? Like particularly I'll say in WoW because I mean there were so many different drops, right?
Yeah.
It was like of the whale, of the bear, of the eagle.
Of the eagle, yeah.
Yeah, like all that
Of the
stuff.
monkey, like they would have stats for. You would hope, especially in classic, that it would drop for your class. You don't want to be a rogue and then you finally get that piece of green gear to drop and it has spirit on it. You're like,
Mhm.
what am I gonna do with this? So
Like
yes,
it was like a joke with me and my friend in WoW. Every time I got something that said of the whale, I always said more like of disappointment because
exactly.
we just never used it. But there is a degree of like, before transmogs, you would have like different sets of gear. One was for strutting around town, one was for looking cool, and then one was for function in battle, right?
Yes,
So,
exactly.
and then in some cases, at least with me in Final Fantasy 11, where we would actively be changing gear on the fly, right? So, as a paladin, I would look like a clown wearing like a dress, but because I have fire resistance, I'd literally be standing in front of a dragon having it breathe fire on me, and I'm sitting there wearing a muumuu and it's doing no damage.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then, but it's like that's where I wish there was transmogs, but you got so much street cred for having that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
Or, you would grind to that point. And I think, and you could probably test this better than I can because I can't stand the series Monster Hunter, especially. Like, how many times have
Oh
you
yeah.
had to fight stupid? What's his name? the giant bunny thing just to get like one pelt so that you could get like a new pair of
Create
shoes.
that new piece of armor you want for your set. Yes, it can get insane in those games. Especially like you touched on Monster Hunter. I never got to the point in any of those games where
Oh, you're
you
lucky.
see these master rank guys just farming the toughest boss at the end to get the best gear. I didn't have the patience for it. As much as I love that series and the franchise, I've never gotten to that point where I'm at the extreme in-game grind level, grinding things out. So but I understand what you're talking about, like having to farm an animal just for that one more scale or something just to make that next piece of gear. And you get it, and you might be fighting something else where, stuff has dropped for me already to make an even stronger piece of gear that I was farming for this other one that's obsolete now.
Yeah, and I think that's particularly with an MMO, that's how they keep you, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, again, I'll use Final Fantasy 11 as an example because honestly, I played that the most. It's like first you get artifact gear, then you get artifact 2, and then artifact 2 is literally obsolete the next level. So then you have to get all this custom crafted gear. Then
Yeah.
you have to get rare exclusive gear. Then you have to get instance gear. And it's a treadmill, right? But
Hmm.
with a game like Diablo 4, Diablo 3, you know, you can customize and basically create a build the way you want and then kind of tweak it depending if you're doing PvP, if you're doing PvE, or if you're just messing around, right?
Yeah.
Like and skipping ahead a bit, one of my favorite memories, and I know you know this because you lived it, was when you and I did that hardcore run to finish Diablo 3.
Yeah.
And I think at one point we had so much loot, like we would go through an entire quest and be like, I don't know what any of this stuff is. We got so many. I don't even remember upgrading my gear because
Yeah.
we just had so much. And it's one of those things where you don't even know if it's better or not at a certain
Exactly.
point. Like games literally have to do red for bad and green for good at this
And
point. It's not black and white anymore,
and
which
I
I
think
think is
the
kind of crazy.
yeah, and I think Diablo 3 was kind of like not initial Diablo 3, because even loot in when that game first launched was having a yellow. You were very good to come out with a nice little yellow piece of gear. But when the Reaper Souls, I think, is when we finally started to do our hardcore
Yeah,
run together. And refresh my memory, you died, didn't you?
you died.
During the first, or did I die during the first attempt?
No, no, I lie. We did it with SNES Mapper. It was you, me, and SNES Mapper. He died
He
and then
died.
bowed out, and then you died, and I was a crusader, and I basically survived by the crack of the skin of the hair of my ass.
Yeah.
And then you
I think I
grinded,
leveled back up. Yeah.
yeah, in like a day, and we were like towards the end.
Hmm. But with that game, when Reaper Souls came out, it started to become like loot explosions. I think Borderlands is kind of guilty of this. I don't know about the initial one, but for Borderlands 2, there would be
Oh,
some in-game bosses where at the end it's just boom, 30 pieces of gear on the ground, and you're hoping just to see the purple or something from Borderlands or the translucents. I think that might have been in one. I don't know if I never got one in one or two. And then Diablo 3, Reaper of Souls, kill a boss, boom, loot explosion. And it's weird. That's kind of like a different feeling of, because you know there's going to be good loot dropping. It's then just a randomization of, is it going to be the good piece I need for the build? So that's where it starts working in. Whereas back before, like for example, the World of Warcraft, I knew what the boss had in its table. It had these three items I could use. All of them were going to be good for me. It's just, all right, with the two items that drop off of them, are one of them going to be mine? So it's kind of like a different balance of the loot and how it's generated these days. And
so what about loot boxes then? And by loot boxes, I don't mean like the randomization of it. I mean just kind of like that dopamine hit, kind of like opening up like a pack of cards, right?
yeah,
You hope for the shiny.
exactly.
Do you think that's kind of the same thing, or do you feel like in terms of an action RPG, you get more satisfaction out of it because you have a challenge to go with it?
I get more satisfaction out of the the combat and RPG elements of it than rather just okay, let me take a chance on this. Like with because you play Diablo 4, so you know how when you kill the world boss, they give you that grand cachet that you
Yeah.
could open up. Instead of that's kind of like a loot box, like it's a cash box. Instead of hitting that button and having a chance of something coming out, I'd rather it just go ahead and fall from the boss like it normally does. Or if you're earning a loot box, and we'll say Overwatch, if you hit a certain level, they give you a box to open up. I don't like that. Like let me open a box, see if I get a piece of shiny thing out of it. I'd rather it be something that's involved in the combat elements of the actual game.
Yeah,
I
and
get
like
more excitement out of it that way.
yeah, I get more excitement out of it too. Like in the case of like, Nidhogg or Fafnir in Final Fantasy 11, they're dragons, right? So they drop dragon scales, or they
Hmm.
drop, a specific blueprint for a piece of armor that only they drop. It's tied to that instance. It's not just saying, okay, here's a box filled with randomly generated nonsense based on your level and an algorithm we created in the background. Like it's
Yeah.
still exciting, but to me it's more exciting to know, like, oh no, we killed this guy like 10 times and we didn't get this particular sword, or you know Stevo needs this sword, so we're going to keep grinding this thing, or
Yeah.
like in a Monster Hunter where you're trying to get materials, like what that loot is going to be. And I feel like, at least for me, I get a more of a sense of satisfaction knowing, like, yes, we got the pelt.
Yes. For that certain target farm. And I don't know if this was going to be a topic because I can't remember our rundown with seeing how they've kind of evolved over time. Some of the looters, like we've kind of talked about it a
They
little bit,
have, yeah.
but with how even using Diablo as an example, seeing how the loot has evolved throughout that game, where it used to be, I wasn't a Diablo 1 or 2 player, so I started with 3. So, yes, I started with 3, and that's like one of my favorites. I tried to go back and play 2, and I just think it's slow and
It's
not as good. But
three is
people say it's the best.
3 is an arcade game in
Yeah,
comparison to 2.
exactly.
That's how I see it.
But the loot from, I'll just say Diablo 3, it was all right. I'm trying to find my gear set I want for the whirlwind build. That's a build where you can go around just spin the wind, so they say. And you, of course, the first thing you want is for the loot piece to drop. Second thing you're looking for are the stats on the gear piece. You want it to have, if it's a glove piece, critical hit chance, critical hit damage, attack speed, or so on and so forth. There are top tier stats that you look for. And once again, kind of going back to the old days of WoW, if it rolled with the stat you don't need, well, now it's like a useless piece because it rolled with the stat that I don't need. But they've incorporated systems now where you can transmog the gear not just to look, but you can change out a stat roll on it. So if you didn't want that critical chance hit on there, you could re-roll that piece of loot for a different item stat on there. Maybe you needed critical hit damage instead of the chance, so you can have a chance of swapping it out. But even that in itself is a like a loot box roll
Yeah,
because you're
it's
not
randomized.
guaranteed to get the roll. Yeah, it's like everything's random. And now in Diablo 4, it's even changed even more. They try to simplify it and at the same time complicate it at the same time. And when we go into games I might recommend or some of our favorites, there's one I'm going to say that I think does it best that no one who probably watches our channels or at least your channel has even probably played. But just with Diablo 4, now you have to worry about a certain aspect roll that's on it, along
Yeah.
with the number that's going to be next to your critical strike chance. And then it just starts getting crazy, and it gets too in depth and complicated sometimes where I just want the piece of loot to drop and I'm like, oh, this is the piece. It's going to be good. And that's it. It doesn't need anything done to it. So I think they just overcomplicate things sometimes too much in games these days just to create that continuation of go more, keep playing until you get that perfect piece.
You know which game I honestly thought did like rare loot pretty well?
What do you got?
Well, actually, there's two. Darksiders 2 with Death.
I never finished Darksiders 2 yet. So do
Oh,
you classify that as a looter?
my pearls. Kinda like I think like I see the pitchforks. Like a Zelda looter, kind of. Because it does do like the whole green, white, gray, blue, yellow. And you can kind of customize death the way you want. You have different weapons. You have
Okay.
single-handed scythes, dual scythes, swords, axes, whatever you want to do. And it didn't overly complicate it. It literally said DPS will be this, defense will be this, agility will be this, and then you just keep customizing, right? And the other game I thought did it pretty well as well was Dragon's Crown. I mean, honestly, it's a beat 'em up, but you
Yeah.
can still customize your character in terms of stats and whatnot a little bit. And I played the barbarian or the Amazon rather, and basically I just kept investing in stats that would allow me to do like this crazy like screen clearing spin move back and forth. I
Yeah.
forgot the name of it. But by the end of it, it was like each time it was doing like 20% damage to a boss, like each pass. And, even though I stopped getting gear that actually helped it, it was still addictive and a power trip to keep doing that. And I think that's also part of like what makes action RPGs particularly fun
Oh
is
yeah.
because you are basically running around like, I mean, I usually play sorcerers, as you know, and you're basically a glass cannon.
Hmm.
But when you're able to tweak everything, since I mostly play ice, it's like, oh no, I'm surrounded. No, I'm not.
The
Or it's like I teleport out of the way and it's like it's your character. And yeah, I mean, there's a meta and all this stuff, but if you're just into creating something that is your way, action RPGs are really good for that when there's a loot mechanic, especially like in a
yeah.
PvE format. So,
And I think where we might differ some in our action RPGs and stuff we play is normally like with me, if D4, I'm like, hey, a new season starting, I'm doing another character. Like I'm always starting and rolling again. And I really farm out the end game where you tend to you level up and you don't really farm a whole lot of end game and like Diablos and stuff, do you? Or have you been recently?
now I did a couple of seasons in 3. I think I didn't do this most recent one in 4, but
Okay.
when I re-rolled, I made a fire wizard as opposed to an ice wizard. I was like, okay, this is kind of fun, but what am I gonna do next time? A lightning wizard? Like
Yeah.
barbarian is basically just the Hulk. You just run around
Yeah.
jumping on everything. And I don't like pet classes. So necromancer's out.
Too many
Shaman,
buttons for me to hit. Yeah. I don't want to deal with it.
shaman, I didn't really look into.
Okay.
Um, but I do want to play the expansion for the story. I'm one of 3 people in the world who does like the Diablo story.
Oh yeah, the lore in Diablo is awesome. But just with the like you mentioned, the new expansion came out. My main goal with any, especially isometric action RPG or looter that I'm playing, period, is I want to break the game. And a lot of people are like, why do you want to do that? I want to be so overpowered where it's just a cakewalk for everything. I don't need it to be a challenge. That's the excitement, is finally getting to that point where I just feel like a god and I'm just wiping through everything. And this last season was the best example I ever had of getting that feeling, because when this game came out and they had the new class come out, there was literally a build in the end game that it required one specific weapon drop. You at least had to have that to get the build going. And when I finally got that unique weapon drop, I was like, oh, it's on, baby. I'm going to start gearing for this build. And it was a build that basically evolved around just hitting evade. All you did was hit evade. That's how you attacked. That's how you did anything. You hit no other buttons. So what do? You master out this build and you build it up, get it nice and strong. And I have a macro on my mouse here where I hit the button and it's constantly casting evade for me. And the game's playing itself and I'm just obliterating everything, and it felt so good. And it was going around like the rumors where the big streamers were playing the build too, and they're like, you know what? They're probably going to nerf this thing. But normally they don't do it in the middle of a season. They're like, we'll just fix it before the next one starts. We'll let people have their fun here. But it was so overpowered that they literally had to patch it because it was killing servers. It
Oh,
was,
really?
yes, because the evade is meant to do its little flip action and roll if you play Diablo 4. But instead of doing its little flip and roll, you're just going to, like, it's not finishing its animation and it just causing other players to lag out. So it was ruining the experience for everyone else playing it. Sort of like, we got to kill this build, and boom, the patch came out. You can still kind of play it, but it's nowhere near as fun as it was. But the goal for me, long story short, is just become as strong as I can. If there's an early weapon in the game, like Alex with Diablo 1, with getting the butcher weapon, that's going to dominate it, at least for the early game to mid game or whatever, I want that. I did it with Dragon Quest 11, even though that's your standard turn based JRPG. You could go to the casino and keep playing until you got enough coins to buy. I think it was like the platinum sword or something in there. It was just an awesome sword you could get for the early game to like mid game kind of stuff. And I just stayed in that casino and gambled because it was so easy to get money to get that sword. Got it and just felt so overpowered near the beginning of the game. And I love that feeling of being overpowered and cheating the game. So that's like my goal in looters.
So let's take it out of looters for 1 second then.
Okay.
So like in a game like, and I'm gonna use Xenoblade and I'll use Trails of Cold Steel as an example, right? Statistic min-maxing. It doesn't necessarily need to be loot, but you get like those potions and stuff where it's like, +5 strength. Do you
Hmm.
tend to stack it onto one person? Like, for
Always.
example, yeah. So like Fee, and for those of you who play Cold Steel, you're already nodding along. Her evasion's through the roof. If you crank up her evasion and you put a bunch of stats where every time she evades, she gets like TP points or whatever the case may be, or she counters, she will solo entire bosses by
Oh, wow.
herself. And then you just have to up critical hit. Same thing you could argue with the Star Ocean game. There's a character called in Last Hope called Miracle, who is basically, your token anime cat girl. She has like cat paws for weapons. I maxed out her speed and critical hit, and she can juggle. So in Last Hope, I took out one of the like end game super bosses. Basically, she did an uppercut and just kept doing it over and over again. And it was like 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000. It took me like half an hour. But as stupid as that is, I felt so good.
Reminds me of the game we're going to talk about, what I showed you in my clip. It almost sounds similar to what I was trying to do in that game.
Yeah, and I guess that does bring us into the game du jour, which is Gundam Breaker 4, which is a mashup of like 5 things you and I both like. Looters,
Yes.
action RPGs, giant robots, and
Yep.
wackiness and anime.
Yeah.
But so I know how I discovered Gundam Breaker, and I think I can't remember if you knew about it ahead of time or I told you.
It was all you, my friend. It was you.
Okay, so long story short, I was on PlayAsia one and I saw this Gundam game on the Vita, Gundam Breaker 1, and I was like, "Ooh, this sounds kind of cool." And I was reading a description and somebody literally said, "This is Gundam Diablo." And I was like, "Oh no, I have to play. I have to check this out. I have to check this out."
That's
Not
exactly how you told me. It's Gundam Diablo. That's how you described it to me.
due to technical difficulties, we are now back. So,
We are.
yeah, I imported Gundam Breaker from there it is. There it is.
Went ahead and grabbed these while I was up too.
So basically somebody on GameFAQs took like clip art and put English over all the menus so you knew where stuff was. Boot up the game. Sure enough, it's so easy to play. It's all very obvious, right? The
Yep.
story, couldn't tell you what the hell happened, but it doesn't really matter
Nope.
because the fact of the matter is you start with the traditional Gundam 78, X78, or RX 78 rather. And as you customize your Gundam, it's basically Gunpla, like the models, right? Because kit bashing is a thing where people buy multiple Gundam models and then make them into a super Gundam that they
Yeah.
like. And that's what this game embodies. And that's basically the plot. It's a bunch of gunplas just going around and kids basically just mashing them together like this.
Yes.
And
And
before
it's
you know it,
awesome.
you have this monstrosity running around, and it's like a tall geese mixed with this, that, and the third. But the thing is, they keep making entries because they keep making Gundam series, and then they keep adding to it.
Yes.
And I've played and finished every single entry. But the third one was the first one to ever be in English.
Yes.
And I have to say, from a plot and a story perspective, weren't missing much at all.
No. But we can navigate our menus a
Yeah,
lot easier now.
but now we know what we're upgrading, and
Yes.
I don't go from not having a cape to having a cape, you know?
Yep.
But so you played the first one, I know. Did you play the second one
Yeah.
too?
No, I did not play the second one. I want to say because I think the version I have here it has English in it. So I thought this
Oh,
had English in it for the translation on it
the
through the
third one
menus.
does. The third
Third
one
one definitely
does.
does. I thought the second one didn't. I don't think there was a copy that just for funsies. I'm gonna look it up on PlayAsia now.
Sold out.
Hopefully they can just have a listing of it. I have no idea. But yeah, played the first one and loved it. Now, if you ask me, do I remember anything from it? I actually couldn't tell you. And that's what because I just have a bad memory of anything and I just can't remember things. So I'm pretty sure it didn't follow the format of like 4, how it is now. We get into that of how the levels are laid out. Wasn't the
Yeah.
first one like a continuous level you play through
It,
until
it was just like waves of bad dudes.
okay.
But you felt like a badass going through it. That's the whole thing.
Yep.
And I think what made it even cooler was the mismatching or the mix matching of all the different Gundams from all the different series. And for everybody home, since I already know the answers, of the Gundam series, which one's your favorite?
Well, this is actually really easy for me because while I love Gundam, I'm not the nowhere near the aficionado like Alex. Alex has seen so much more. I've literally only seen one before I say my favorite one. I've seen '08 MS Team. I've seen that. I've seen what did I get through? Like half of Gundam Wing. Haven't finished that yet. And then my favorite one, G Gundam. That's like the only one I've watched all the way through, Mobile Fighter G Gundam. With that said, I started watching. There's some on uh, Disney Plus and Hulu and stuff now you can watch, and I forget the title of it, but it's almost
Wait, Disney Plus has Gundam?
it's either Disney Plus or Hulu. I'm watching on one of them, and I think it's actually on both.
Wow, the
Uh,
House of Mouse, man.
they have so many things on there now, but it has like Char and everyone in it again. So you're gonna know
Oh,
more than
oh,
me.
that's if Char, so that's the original series, unless it's Gundam Origin, which is about Char as a kid and
It's
becoming.
Origin, I
There you go.
think, Gundam Origin, because I'm like, you know what? After playing Breaker 4 again, I was like, I really need to start watching more. Like, why don't I continue to just watch some? And you've always been praising Unicorn, saying, man, watch Unicorn. The newest entry that came out, I think
Which
it's,
Mercury?
yeah, the Witch one. People have praised that, saying it was so good. But when you're
The
diving,
animation's off the charts, man.
yeah, but not to go into talking about the show, but there's different, how do you call them, like time arcs in it. There's like the century ones, then there's the other one. I forget
Oh,
the different time.
Universal Century. That's like
Yes,
that is the canon, and
that's the
then
canon one.
everything else is a spin-off.
Exactly. So it's like for me with the Mobile Fighter G Gundam, I guess that's technically like a spin-off one, right?
Yeah,
Because
they were trying
you
to
don't
catch
control
on to
your
Dragon Ball.
exactly. You don't control your mechs like they do in G Gundam. But that's what man, I fell in love with that. My best friend at the time, who I did a video on him, he's since passed away. He's the one who really got me into watching that show. I mean, Toonami would come on, and I'd pretty much just watch it for Dragon Ball Z. And he's like, dude, you got to start watching all these other ones. And G Gundam was one of them. Of course, they had Gundam Wing on there first, but I didn't really watch Gundam Wing. And Ronin Warriors, I don't know if people remember that
Oh,
one.
love that show.
Used to
Love
watch
that.
that all the time
Love
too.
that show.
And then they started showing G Gundam, and he's like, "Man, if you like Dragon Ball Z, you're gonna love this." And sure enough, like I fell in love with it. And I always like to watch like that final episode scene every once in a blue moon, and then some Shining Finger, Burning Finger montages. I just love it. So yes, it's my favorite. And from what I just a real quick update from what I looked up with Gundam Breaker 2 and stuff, yes, that did not have an English one. So that's why I did not get that because it didn't have English subtitles. So yeah.
There you have it. Yeah, my personal favorite, I think, is Iron Blooded Orphans, and I
No, that's the one you're talking about. Iron Blooded Orphans,
no,
but
no,
okay.
no, but Unicorn is just as good.
Okay.
But you see, Gundam Wing, like it's a great show, but it's so politically driven, it kind of puts me to
Yes.
sleep.
And I think, but isn't that the one like we mentioned early Dragon Ball Z Toonami? Isn't Gundam Wing? Would you say that's the one, at least for stateside here, known for kind of blowing the series
Yeah.
up, or no? Okay.
Yeah, because in Japan it bombed. But then over here it's like, wow, there's like all these really cool giant robots. Ooh, this one has emo kid wings, and then it kind of just blew up from there.
Yeah.
But in general, for me, I love the original series. Char Aznavour is like one of the best antagonists ever. I love Double Zeta. Iron Blood Orphans is my favorite. Witch of Mercury is really good. Unicorn's really good. MS Team is excellent. War in the Pocket is probably the most Gundam not Gundam movie you'll ever see, or
Okay.
miniseries.
Well,
Because
in your
basically,
opinion, should I watch the movie kind of tie-in of the original series or watch the original series? Because I heard they released like three little movies or something that you can watch instead.
yeah, the three movies are a super cut. They basically took the whole series. I think it's 2 seasons and made them into like 3 2-hour movies.
So is it worth though watching the series, or you could be okay?
Yeah,
Because
I was
don't you get
fine.
more character development in the series? I would think, or it doesn't matter.
It's so there's so much politics going on. It's very heavy. Like
Okay,
like
I might just
honestly,
watch the movies then. I might just watch the movies
the
then
movies
for the
for the
original.
movie, even the movies, I watched them subbed, and it took me like I think 5 days because it's a lot. You
You
know,
you are way better than me in that because I think the voice actors, at least for animes, I think the English voice actors do such a great job. I can watch English dub no problem. I understand purists who like watching the sub and everything, and they do great voice acting themselves, but I just love the English versions, like seeing how they do their voice acting. So,
all right. So that being said, what'd you think of the dub in Gundam Breaker 4?
ay ay ay. All right. So Gundam. uh, I'm gonna be honest. Like with the I would keep it on like I was skipping through all the cutscenes, so I wasn't hearing a lot of dialogue and anything. And during the actual gameplay where they're talking and stuff, kind of had the volume turned down for the voices, so I didn't hear a lot of it. But it just reminded me of how would I put it? My first anime Saturday morning cartoon kind of dub is how I would
Yeah.
put it.
So that's the whole thing. Like, and this is where I find it so strange. I've never watched Gundam Age or Build Fighters or any of that. Right? Like I'm aware
You've
of
never
them.
watched at least the first one? I
Nope.
forgot to mention Build Fighters, the first season or the first series. I watched all the way through. Actually loved it.
Now, is that geared towards kids?
I would say so. I'd put it in that Yu-Gi-Oh age range category.
Hey, watch your mouth, man. Yu-Gi-Oh's a man's game.
Then there you go. Then Build Fighters is a man's show. You can watch it.
So the reason why I say that is because Gundam Breaker Force plot, to your point, is essentially a Saturday morning cartoon, and it's totally geared towards children, which I
Yeah.
find funny considering every single Gundam series I have watched is like a political drama, which is not geared towards children at
No.
all.
Yeah. And the thing with these games, since he's talking about 4 right now, I have 4 here. Alex probably has, and I have 3 here, but not 2 or New Gundam Breaker, that monstrosity that everyone's talked about. But
not
with
important.
these games, story wise, if we hadn't made it clear, this is a Gunpla based game. So you're building these Gunplas and they're playing in like it's make believe, it's computer world. You're putting your Gunpla in a simulation. So it's not like your main character who's controlling the Gunpla with however they do it is actually getting hurt or damaged in any kind of way. It's all like in this isolated simulation of a battle that's taken place. Now, things always happen in these stories. It seems like it happens with everyone where the bad guy team or whatever starts to have some nefarious ways where they're going to take over this simulation world and all this such and such. But it doesn't really affect the outside world. Like you're not going to change anything outside of the simulation, at least to
Yeah.
my knowledge. It's just controlling what's in here. But that's what kinds of makes it kind of funny because they're being so serious, like with the voice acting and stuff. Like, bro, you're in a simulated combat. Like, okay, what are you gonna do?
It's like it's kind of like that whole thing like as a kid when you're on the playground, right? And some kid is like in the jungle gym. It's like, oh, yeah, we can't go over there because he has control of the jungle gym, and now recess is ruined. Like
Yeah,
it's like, bro, there's so much more important stuff right now. But for the purpose of this game, we're
yeah,
gonna go through all of it. And
yes,
that's very much what the plot is in this one. I think in the third one, it was the same thing. Like there was a computer virus and
yeah.
it was
Same
affecting
aspect.
it was affecting the Gunpla MMO, and in this one, it's, "Hey, we're the underdog team." I'm like, "Oh, I know how this goes. The underdog team is somehow gonna make it into the finals like they're the
Yep,
Mighty Ducks, and then there's gonna be a whole big thing at the end, and we're gonna solve it, and everybody's gonna be happy."
exactly.
But as stupid as it is, the customization and the loot and the fact that you get to fight giant versions of other Gundam, because I love fighting giant things, and the satisfaction of literally fighting an RX-78 that's master grade, meaning it's like 10 times bigger than you, and knocking its leg off and just seeing it
Yeah.
come down like a redwood tree is so satisfying.
And I guess we should just for people another clarification. If you've never been into Gunpla, if you don't know what it's about, it's model kits that people build based on the robots from the show. I don't have one within arm's reach, but I have them displayed around me. I won't get up to get one.
I have one back there.
Yeah, but
I
they
love
have different grade sizes of these Gunpla. So you start off with a smaller size, that's a high grade. Then you can get to a model that's called a real grade, that's a little bit bigger. A master grade, that's a little bit bigger, and so on and so forth. They have different scales to these things. And the game incorporates that within it as well to an extent. You only get high grade or master grade parts to build within this game when you're customizing and building your character. And you don't even get the master grade stuff till after you've beaten the game. So you're like, oh, I want to create a master grade one, but that's like post game stuff. But there are Gundams in the story that you're fighting that are I think real grades are like the biggest ones, right? That they probably are. I forget what grade size scale that is called, where it's the bigger ones.
Yeah, so it's
It's
real great.
above master grade. I know
Oh,
that.
that perfect grade.
That's it. Perfect grade. Those are so you're fighting perfect grade ones within the game, and unfortunately, you don't get to unlock perfect grade parts in the game. But with the customization in this game and all the menu systems you have it, there are ways to scale your Gunpla to look bigger, even though it's actually technically not. That's kind of a way you can kind of break the game in so of a sense. But that's your
Ac-
history on what Gunpla are and how it relates to this game.
And you actually forgot one. You forgot SD for Super
Oh
Deformed
yes,
Gundam.
the SDs, the ones that I never bothered playing with or saving any parts for in the game. Yes,
Nope,
there's
I
SDs.
I recycled all of them. But
Exactly.
I will say, so the other cool thing is you can even take accessories and weapons from the different grades, and to Steven's point, you can blow them up or shrink them down so they fit. So
Hmm.
my Gundam, the Alcender Mark 10, or by the end, I think, or Alcender Omega. I forgot what I named him because you can actually name and save the builds, so you can actually see a progression of your character. I actually took an SD Knight helmet and I shrunk it down so he could wear it on his head, so it looks like he has like a traditional Black
Wow.
Knight helmet on.
And I think you took the customization way like further than I did in this game because I didn't really. I would just plug the part on and kind of play with it. And I don't know if Alex will do this. I don't want to put the pressure on him to do this, but
You
I'll
want me to
send.
edit?
I'll send over the screenshot of my final build if you want to plug it in here somewhere, and
Oh
then
yeah, yeah.
you can show them your final build too of what we kind of finished off with.
And
At
we
least
both
what I
had
finished the game with.
completely different Gundams. Which
Yes, completely different styles, completely different Gundams, and with how it kind of stunk though, because like I said, you couldn't get master grade stuff during the main
yeah.
story. So the stuff you're going to see on mine, which I don't know if it's to be the same with yours, Alex, it's just going to be all high grade parts, but they still all look the same and it's the same size. But where the differences come, like I guess we can get into how the kind of system works here is you're going through and playing these levels in the game and you're fighting other gunpla that are in it and their parts are falling off of them. So you
Stealing your
collect
parts.
yes. You're as you're playing through a level, which these levels in this game are just this is where it took a step down for me from Gundam Breaker 3, and I was having a hard time getting around because in Gundam Breaker 3, you're literally playing through a little level till you get to the
Yeah.
end of it. In this game, it's more wave based, and you're sitting in the level, you fight off waves of enemies till it teleports you to another section, and you fight off more waves. But during this time, you're collecting parts that are dropping off of these Gunpla. All culminates to an end boss fight at the end of the stage. And then you get to the end screen and you see the 60 parts that you collected during this level. And now you're shoveling through all these parts. And the parts have certain abilities attached to them. And certain they give you certain stats to your gunpla and stuff. I won't hog all the airtime here. I'll let you talk more about it too. But that's where the kind of collecting part comes into how you want to build your gunpla as well.
Yeah, and I think to the not the detriment of this game, but how it differs. Like Katie watched us play Diablo and she found it like the explosions, the
Yeah.
yelling, the screaming, the laughing, like all this excitement. But with Gundam Breaker 4, she's sitting there, and mind you, there's explosions and laughing and excitement and everything else. She goes, "You've been sitting in this menu for an hour and a half.
Yes.
What are you doing?" I'm like, "I am tweaking my foot." And she's like, "This is the worst possible game somebody with obsessive compulsive disorder can ever play."
Oh.
I I think my time in that game is 40 hours. I am not kidding.
Oh wow.
I think 35 of it is me in menus, just customized. The game itself is not long.
Guys, with the customization, we're not kidding. If there's like he said, his foot part, you could angle it and place it to like the finest point, fine tune that you want. That's what the thing with this game is. A custom over three. Three didn't have as many tweaks as you could do that you can in this game. It is so fine tooth where you can place things, all the extra parts you could put on your character with all my bazookas. I don't mind. Like you could just the customization is crazy. It's you could get lost in it, like you just said.
But it's still so addictive because like
Yeah.
and the good thing about this particular game is you'll like you said, you'll get like 60 parts and you'll go through all 60 and you may find a part from a Gundam you really like
Mhm.
Barbados Lupus Rex is one of my personal favorites, right? So Barbados Lupus Rex is, as it sounds, it's like a wolf. So he has a tail, and the tail can actually it attacks because it has a blade on it. So I was farming a level trying to get the tail to drop. I finally did. The tail is like level 2, and I'm level like 25. You can take all those garbage parts and melt them into that one part you want to get it up to the your level. So that
Yeah.
so that you can keep customizing to the way you want. So technically, if you find an array of skills you like and you're like, "I'm good with this. I'm never ever changing this part out." you can always upgrade it.
Exactly. And there's rarity in this game too. You could get a 1-star part all the way up to what's it, 5 stars is the max in
Yeah,
this?
and you can increase
Yeah.
rarity too. Right?
Yes, you can increase that. So you literally can keep that same part. And all rarity is in this game is there's a substat on each part. If you got a 1-star rarity, what is it? Is it 1 or 2 stats are in the substats, or might only be 1?
Yeah,
But if you have a 5-star rarity item,
you can have
you get like
5.
5 substats. So you want that extra substat to just make your gunpla that much stronger. And that's where the customization even gets deeper. You can carry over a substat from another part, replace it with a substat on yours. That's why I think Gundam Breaker 4 does a good job with stuff like that, unlike a Diablo or
Yeah.
something. It's so much easier to carry over a substat in that in this game than anything else. The disappointing part with it is I wish, unless it's something I'm missing, I could carry over one of the special attacks or moves to another part. I'm like,
Yeah, you
man,
can't. You can't.
I wish I could put this burning finger on this part. Like, I wish it could get that deep, but it just can't. And the other part that let me down with it was the way the combat system works in here. I love cooldown based kind of turn, reminds me of MMOs. I love that kind of combat system. Except on this one, they put certain attacks on your cooldown gauge and they put other attacks on, was it called an EX gauge,
Yeah.
Alex, that you're trying to work up?
Yeah.
So you have to build up a meter of certain point values to be able to use your EX moves that might cost 1. They might cost 3 points of bars to use. And my favorite move was on that gauge instead of my cooldown gauge. So it just, and in Gundam Breaker 3, my burning finger was on just my cooldown side, or going in my super mode was on my cooldown side. I hated the EX implementation. I wish it was just like another set of cooldown skills we could have put on, but you don't want to break the game, I guess, to give you all these super moves to constantly use. So
Yeah, and
it did let me down.
what was the what I also thought was really cool. I mean, that part was really annoying, but I did invest in stats that actually reduced those cooldowns and allowed me to build up the EX gauge faster.
That exactly that could
Yeah,
happen.
and then once I had it maxed out, I would just go berserk. And the when when my Gundam went berserk, he kind of did like, like a ballerina thing. And then and Katie was like, "Is that what he does?" I'm like, "Oh no, no, I picked that one." So, and even
And
the victory pose, his victory pose is like him with his arms crossed, and he had a cape at one point, and the cape is like flapping in the
nice.
wind. And then I gave him like a Buster sword, and he had the cape with the Buster sword. And she's like, "You basically just made a robot version of Cloud, but he's purple." Like, but
The the other thing with it was with the I wanted to do these special moves, but like I said, my goal is to break a game in this type of thing. So my final build was kind of like Alex was explaining one of his in a different game. It was a juggle build. I would hit an enemy, pop it in the air, and then just continue to juggle it in the air. It never hit the ground, so I didn't even have a chance to really have to use any moves to keep it in. There were some cooldown moves I would use to keep it in the air, but since my cooldown was reduced, I just juggled enemies to death. Now, that worked really well in the boss fights too, but that's also where I have a nitpick, Alex. You said you liked fighting the perfect grade monstrosity versions of things. I hated that part. Well,
why?
I won't say I hate. I'd rather I liked the one-on-one where it's like 3 Gunplas you're fighting against versus
Okay.
your 3, because I could actually use my moves on them like a burning finger. I can't use a burning finger on a perfect grade. It just kind of auto blocked it. So it kind of made some of your attacks obsolete, at least for my build, from being able to fight against it. But with my juggle build, I didn't have to use any. I just decimated them anyway because I would just sit there in the air, constantly attacking the larger bosses. So it made them really easy to fight. But I was disappointed that I couldn't use my other moves on it. And there actually is a little. You can't just mash away at enemies in this. I know I'm ranting on here, but I'm gonna go with the burning finger or shining finger again.
For one
Enemies in
movie.
this game, yeah, they have a vulnerable state, and you have to get that enemy, at least for my move to work, the shining finger. It will not work against an enemy unless it was in that vulnerable state and it got broken. If he's just standing there ready to fight and I went to do that charge move, I'd bounce right off of him and go
Yeah.
through him. So there is strategy and timing into how you approach these fights, and that you can't just like mash away. If you're trying to actually do it, you can just hit X the whole time and still win. The game's pretty easy.
Yeah.
But if you want to kind of combo up and everything and do a combo into a burning finger, you kind of have to get them to certain states in combat and stuff.
Yeah, I think this game was definitely compared to the other entries, this one is more geared towards make Gundam your Gundam the way you want it. Like it's very much
Yeah.
designed to that. But I think the other reason why I really enjoyed the bosses is because at one point I actually got a grappling hook and basically it would shoot the grappling hook, I'd latch onto like their face and then I would
Yeah.
basically just pull myself directly in the air. And mind you, I have this giant sword and I would just boom right in the head like Guts and Berserk. And like literally, I think there was one instance I knocked the perfect grade's head right off. And it was just
That's
like and it was
awesome.
just spinning around circles and I just kept like re-grappling and hitting it over and over again.
That's another way I would use my juggle, is I had the grappling hook to get over here, get him back to me, and just keep the juggle alive too if I could. So
A- a-
grappling hook.
And it's all in universe for Gundam. These aren't like made up things. They all appear
Nope.
in one movie, show, OVA, any of that stuff. And
So
if you watch enough of it, you're like, "Oh, look, it's this one. Oh, look, it's that one. Oh, I
mhm.
forgot about that." Um,
And the other thing that I wish would have been, which I understand, like I guess why they couldn't do it, but and I can't remember if it was like this in Gundam Breaker 3 or not, but the master grades in this park, like I said, there's no statistical upgrade. It just makes your Gundam look bigger. Do you remember if in 3 they were actually a power boost along with it, if it was the same
I
part?
think
I can't
I
remember.
think there was.
I felt like there was a power boost with it. So I wish it was like that in this game, because it would give me more incentive to want to farm out Master Gear parts, because right now I have no incentive to want to unless I want to make it look bigger.
You didn't mess with multiplayer or anything, did you? Because I didn't.
No PS Plus, so I
Oh,
couldn't.
that's right. He
Yep.
finally has internet and he has no PS Plus. The irony.
For the good one, they just ask for way too much. If you could get the good one for $60, sure, I'd do it. But nah,
Well,
100 something bucks for the year,
I
I
had
can't do
like
it.
years and years ago. I bought like 10 years worth of PlayStation Plus on Black Friday because it was like half off. And then when they rolled out this tier system, they said, "Hey, we're going to upgrade you to Essential for like the next 5 years." And that was like
That's awesome.
2 years ago.
Oh,
So
lucky.
I'm just
Which, by the way, my 10-minute warning before I have to go get him.
okay.
See, I knew this was gonna have to come to abrupt thing. We could go on forever, or I could get him, and we pick back up when I get back. It's up to you.
No, I think we're pretty much at the end.
Okay.
Because honestly, we've just been ranting here. I think we both really enjoyed this game for the most part.
And I could talk to Alex about probably anything for we'd go over time. I could do 3 hours. We could just keep going down trails talking about anything. So
Yeah, so maybe this is a good thing. But
I do want to say, I don't. What was you? I know you had your layout. I didn't get to. Are we going to recommend anything,
if
or we got too much time? Not enough time
if
left.
you have anything you want to recommend,
I didn't get to talk about the Division 2. One of my favorite looters ever. That's the one that's like probably viewers of your channel
the
have
div-
probably never
the
played.
Division 2.
The Division, not even the first one, the second one. Because I always wanted Borderlands to be more in depth like this. Borderlands, when it comes to loot and everything, it's just like the weapons and a shield. Like that's all you're getting in the game. And then I forget the other little parts you get. But I wanted to have a shooter come out that literally your chest piece, your legs, like just like a World of Warcraft, but it was a shooter based game. And I wanted it to go even deeper to where it was like MMO style, where I'm shooting you and I'm actually healing you, like in the dungeon. Like this
Got
is
it.
how we can get through a dungeon and raid. And that's where Division 2 is. It is so awesome. If you are into looters and if you like third person shooters, I'm telling you, you can do so many different builds in the game. You could have a healer build where you can build your guy to be out a healer because it has raids, Alex. It has dungeons like any other like medieval style type
And
game. It's
this
just
is Tom Clancy's The Division.
Tom Clancy did Division 2. It's one of the best looters. It'd be in my top 5 looters I've ever played in my life just because how the loot system works, because of all the different weapons you can get. They have the unique weapons and rare ones like you could get in any other game, but it's more about trying to find one that has those stats and secondary stats that make you stronger. The higher level you are, the stronger weapon you'll get, and they do a great job again, unlike certain games like Diablo. If there's a stat that has a maxed out weapon handling on it for that secondary stat, you can save that in your bank
Mhm.
so you can put it on another one to max out its weapon handling. And it just did a great job with that system. The loot drop, it has a smart loot system to where it's kind of customized with today's times, to where you need a certain set of knee pads for your character to make a build that you want.
Just like
You
real
can
life.
tar you can you can target farm an area that drops knee pads. So you're not going to get pants dropping. You want to get knee pads so you can just farm these zones, farm these tougher bosses. I could go on and on about Division 2. So, but if you want a looter recommendation that's a shooter, you gotta try it. There's a reason why it's still alive today. They keep making new seasons, just like a Diablo. I forget what year and season they're up to. And I was really looking forward to the next Division game coming out, but that got canned. So I don't know what the future of it is. But you can either even have Resident Evil cosplay skins in it. So that's another reason why I love Division 2.
So you're making me want to check it out now. This is no good.
It's so cheap, Alex. I'll get it for you just so I can play with you on PC if you want. That's how bad I'll play it
I was
again.
waiting
I
for
normally go back and revisit it.
I
So
was waiting for you to say PlayStation 4 and say, "Wait a minute. What about?"
they've even implemented like Diablo games a hardcore mode in it. So if you die, you lose your character. That's how similar it is to these games. And you just wouldn't think that with a shooter.
So what about Destiny before all the wackiness?
I love Destiny 2. Or not Destiny 2, but I love the original Destiny. I put so many hours in to where I even went to the end game with it, farming the raids at the end, beating King's Fall and stuff. One of the greatest moments I ever achieved, like just such a hype moment when you can complete something like that. I love that game, man. Second one, I didn't really get too much into.
See, the second one I ended up playing a lot with my Final Fantasy buddies, and then
Oh, awesome.
but then they retconned like a whole area of the game with the expansion,
Um,
and little by little we all dropped.
the Destiny games, you kind of hit, at least in the original one, you hit a hard wall
Yeah.
on how strong you can actually get until you can get into a raid. And then trying to get a group of 8 people who to get into a raid, it was tough. There's no group finders or nothing for you had to go
No.
to a secondary website to form a party. So it was a pain.
Yeah. But I guess going back to recommendations, honestly, if you're into like super duper customization of your character, truthfully, the one that I can think of the best is anything from Blizzard, like Diablo 3 or 4, because you can transmog at least to the way
Oh yeah.
you want to look. The only thing where your mileage may vary is in regards to aspects. I've had pieces of gear where I haven't tweaked them the way I wanted to because I'm like, okay, the stat's okay, but it's not exactly what I want. But I'm afraid it's going to go completely left. That I've not played.
Little looter hidden gem. Just want to point it out. This is a loot based game.
Hidden gem,
You're going around
hidden
finding
gem,
gear.
hidden gem. Come on, the lawyers from Metal Jesus are going to come down.
And I mean, we could throw out Torchlight series,
Oh,
another fantastic looter
no, forget
series.
that noise. Torchlight is a piece of hot garbage.
Um, Grim Dawn. I know what game I won't recommend people go play.
Path of Exile?
Oh no, you know what game?
Oh, I do know what game. I do know what game. Tell the people what game.
I forget the name of the game. It's so bad. I don't even want to speak it off my tongue.
What about what did you ever play Nox? This is an old
I
one.
didn't. No, I didn't.
It's on GOG. You should check it out. It's what about
Okay.
Sacred? Did you ever play Sacred?
No, but I do have. I had just bought the PS3 lot from that guy. It had Sacred 3 in it, and I do have some on Steam that I hadn't tried yet. But I know it'd be right up my alley.
And that, by the way, the game that you can't remember because you didn't like it was Victor Vran,
Don't speak its name.
which is by far one of the best looters ever. Listen, guys, y'all know I like metal. There is
Soundtrack, yeah,
there's an expansion with Motorhead in it. Lemmy
yeah,
Kilmister is in it, and that game has infinite customization as well. In terms like you can use a shotgun, which
yeah.
basically makes it a rhythm game. You can have sorcery, daggers, hammers, whatever you want. He's basically a vampire hunter version of John Wick. You just pick something up and it's immediately a weapon.
But there's so many good ones out there, guys. It's too many to recommend. But those are just some
And they all
I
get
touch on.
cheap eventually.
Yeah,
So it's
you can
like,
get so many cheap ones on Steam or anything right now. Really cheap.
but before we go, last question. Oh,
Okay.
last question pertaining to the topic of the Gundam Breaker games. Which one would you recommend the most?
If you want the customization, you go with 4. If you want more of the gameplay, I actually prefer 3
Yeah,
gameplay
I agree.
wise. But customization wise, 4 is on the top of that.
Yeah, if you're a super fan in terms of Gundam itself, 4 is the way to go, but if you're looking for more of like a run-based thing, like, or
Yeah.
levels, you gotta go with 3.
Which we didn't touch on it, but real quick, there was a mobile game that came out for Gundam Breaker, and a lot of people said that's what 4 kind of reminded them of, was
Oh,
like
really?
the mobile version, but upgraded a little bit more. Just combat feels a little bit smoother and flows a little bit better in 3, in my opinion. But there you go.
I don't do mobile. Alright, because I know you gotta get out of here. 3 things you
Yes.
love about this hobby other than playing games.
The collecting aspect is, like you said, like the yard sale aficionado now. Going out on that treasure hunt is like, it's so much fun now, and finding these collections and stuff online. That's been the best part, just buying games. Secondly, especially in the early days of YouTube, was getting the connections with other people, like getting to know other people in the hobby who also like to collect and building relationships with them, like yourself, with Chance and Dustin and Paige, Fem Trooper, and all of them. It was awesome building those relationships. The third thing that I love about this hobby, just the discovery of a franchise or a new game or series that I just would have never thought of playing. Like I said, before I started YouTube, I was mainly just your bro gamer, loving all those games, Halo 2, staying up all night playing it. But watching Happy Console Gamer and his talk about and love of Dragon Quest and RPGs, watching guys like you talk about RPGs and Dustin, it got me into a whole new genre that I never would have thought of wanting to play until I started hearing the thoughts from other people. So just a discovery of new things and new games I would never played. Couldn't have done it without YouTube or the hobby in general. So
There you go, there you go. One more time, where can they find you in the social stuff?
I have like a Twitter and everything, but I don't really use it. So mainly just on YouTube, or here on. I chat with some people here on Discord too. StevoSupremo on YouTube. StevoSupremo on here on Discord. And I can't even tell you what my Twitter name, how I spell it. I know it's. I think it's Supremo Stevo. It's backwards, which I communicate with some viewers in there too. A shout out to. I think you got an episode coming up with them, Daniel Scott. I can't wait for people to know about his gaming journal, which I recently discovered. He told me about a couple weeks ago, and I've been diving head into. I'm like hooked to listen to his stuff, man. So I can't wait for people to hear about him and go to check out his Spotify stuff. So
He is also in the I haven't finished the game yet, Alex. Club.
Exactly. I've talked to him about that, so we know how you are with these.
Yeah, man. I said no rush, and then 3 days later, I'm done. I'm still working.
Which I won't spoil the game, but I know what game they're going to talk about. But
Well, I'm working on the next one right now, and it's very silly, very silly. But anyway, I know you got to go. I am
yeah,
so happy that we finally found an hour and a half to actually
I
talk.
wish it was more. I wish we had more time.
I think I may have to stay up late, and then you just have to not go to bed, and then or wake up really early,
That's fine with
and
me.
then we'll just figure it out.
I'm fine with either. But I'll be back. There's already talks for maybe another future one, but we'll see when it happens.
Yeah, please do. Anyway, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
The kids are back.